Pastor Sam of the Gospel Gunslingers. Got a lot for you today. I'm going to try not to make this an aimless rambling. I think I sometimes do that. We're going to cover a lot of points here about the last Reformation and the arrest of Torben Sondergaard, and this is a very serious issue. There's a lot going on. I want to bring you to the Word, and we're also going to talk a little bit about the news, and I might even pull the fire alarm, so just as maybe a little prophetic foreshadowing. This is my one prop that's here in my temporary studio area, and it may be time to get off a burning building or off a burning ship, because of course our headline question is, who else is under investigation? Are you hanging around the movement? Are you on the map? Have you been to Mexico? Have you been studying to go to Mexico? In training to go to Mexico? Those are all indications that you're not on the list. You're on the short list of people who will suffer persecution. And I'm going to actually address something that came up repeatedly in the comments, that God is going to have the victory in persecution. So I'm going to go to those verses first out of the book of Acts. So before we get to that, we're also going to talk about the nippers coming. Psalm 80, which is the word of the Lord that the Father gave me when I went to see John Bjarnastein. I'm going to tell a little bit about my conversation with him, and how things got out of hand and out of line, and he wound up out of my country. I told him to get out of my country, and that's an assertion that I'm going to maybe alter during this broadcast. We're going to go over some news about what America is and what people think it is. And this is not rumor or conjecture. There's a lot of Supreme Court decisions that have made America stray from the rights that we traditionally had, especially to talk about our faith and live our faith. Whether or not the name that I've chosen for my own channel is helpful. Some people said it may not be helpful. We're going to talk about the plowman overtaking the reaper, and maybe the Jonah that is on your ship. And I'm also going to play my WhatsApp messages from my conversation with Torben, where I made warning about some of these things. So let's go ahead and crack open the Word here. My cover slide, by the way, is when I was in the airport and I was going to see John, and one of the early kickstarts here in Mexico just this year. So I was in the airport, and it was just such a beautiful sunrise right over the volcano Popocatépetl, by the way, which is taller than any mountain in the lower 48 states of the United States. So I was in the airport, and the sun coming up over the mountain was just so pretty that I had to snap it. And so I took a pic of that on my way to go visit John. Okay, so the book of Acts, let's go to this first. Maybe we'll start off on a good note, a positive note, with some chicken soup for the soul. Because, in fact, when persecution came to Jerusalem, it produced a beneficial result. So those of you who pointed that out in the comments, you're correct. It's not exactly maybe in the same way that some expected, but let's take a look what the book of Acts says. We're in the 8th chapter, finishing up the 7th chapter. Stephen the martyr is dying, calling upon God and saying, Lord Jesus, receive my spirit. Chapter 8. And Saul was consenting unto his death, and at that time there was a great persecution against the church, which was at Jerusalem. All right, so it came. The fire came at the burning heat of day, came to Jerusalem. And this is what happened. They preached in prison. Well, some of that, I'm sure. But here's the main result. They were all scattered abroad throughout the regions of Judea and Samaria, except the apostles. So there was basically, if you don't know what a bliss fest is, you can ask a hippie. There was bliss fest going on in Jerusalem, and everybody was just hanging out and having such a good time in the faith. But someone once said, ships are safe in port, but that's not what ships are built for. We as believers, and we as preachers or evangelists, or those of us that take up our cross daily and we're on our way to go share our faith, there's peril out there. We got to get out on the high seas. And if we don't, sometimes the Lord will give us a little nudge by bringing or allowing persecution. So this is how the believers got scattered abroad. And then the persecution increased. Verse 3, as for Saul, he made havoc of the church. I'm sure that was not pleasant at the time. It continues. Entering into every house. So he was running kick-ins. He was running allantamientos, we say in Spanish. Basically SWAT raids. That's what the apostle, Saul, before he was called and made an apostle, he was running SWAT raids, making havoc of the church. Entering into every house and hailing men and women, committed them to prison. So it wasn't just one guy. You know, we talk about Peter being put in jail and Paul and Silas and the things that God delivered them out, and it was great. But this was a great persecution against all of the body of believers. And verse 4, we see again what we had already seen in the first verse. Therefore they that were scattered abroad went everywhere preaching the word. I'm sure that was a lot of fun in the Luke 10 school where you had to go find your person of peace and all that. And if you didn't know, Rees Howells did that 70 years ago. That's something that has been studied by diligent disciples and diligent people who wanted to know what it was to step out by faith. Only one person on the team had a 5-pound banknote from the Bank of England, and nobody knew who it was. So the whole team had to give up in order for it to be revealed who had the cab fare for them to get back to base. But they basically were going out on a Luke 10 mission to go out and find people of peace and for cast their bread upon the waters and see God provide in their life. So if you've done that, I'm glad. And the book that details all of that is Rees Howells, Intercessor, one of the greats, along with John Bunyan and some other things from centuries before. Chapter 9, it continues, and Saul, yet breathing out threatenings and slaughter. Oh, it's more than kick-ins. There were deaths. As I warned Torben that there may be this time around. And Saul, yet breathing out threatenings and slaughter against the disciples of the Lord, went unto the high priest. So he goes to the high authority of, the faith at that time, goes to the Pope, and desired of him letters to Damascus, to the synagogue. So he's looking for warrants. That's what Saul did, is he went to the high priest and he got legal authorization to go smash in these people's doors and kill them, and take some of them to the councils and some to the jail. Oh, men or women, that if he found any of this way, whether they were men or women, he might bring them bound into Jerusalem. Had to get a warrant for that. All right, so yeah, there is a scattering, and that scattering is really what is happening right now. There's going to be a diaspora, and if you think you're on the short list, you may want to think about the protection of which nation you're going to come under. And part of the reason that John and I had harsh words in Mérida, Yucatan, Mexico, is because there has been a path laid out for refugees from the United States. And I am one. If you haven't followed me, I'm a refugee in Mexico because I've unveiled voter fraud. I have unmasked sex trafficking and migrant trafficking and lots of things. I've supported conservative candidates, and that's not cool now. You can go knock doors. In fact, you can go smash shop windows and burn cars and everything if you're an anarchist, but if you support a conservative candidate that wants to stand for traditional American values and help get them in office, then you're going to find yourself persecuted. Well, maybe the persecution will cause people to preach the word in every place. And I would invite you to do that. In fact, you get across the Rio Grande, you're welcome to give me a call, and I can help you find the path through that process. But under the understanding that Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, the president of Mexico, is basically the leader of the free world right now. And we're coming under his protection and the protection of his government and his party with great respect for this nation, for their laws and customs, for their constitution, for the many wars that they have fought to get their own freedom, both politically and from the priesthood order. The power of the Catholic Church was greatly diminished in every one of Mexico's famous wars. So, Jesus told this parable of the workers in the vineyard. And when the Lord got into that, he was focusing on those who came the 11th hour, because a lot of the Jews were haughty and they didn't want the uncircumcised to come in. They didn't like the tax collectors and the prostitutes that had wasted their whole life to come in and get a ticket to paradise. So Jesus told this parable of the workers in the vineyard, and those who came in at the 11th hour received a denarius, the pay that was promised to the others for working all day. And I would just like to make a clear statement to anybody who's following TLR, which I am, and which although I preached the gospel for 20 years before, I got baptized in water after following this movement, and the Lord began to teach me a lot about the circumcision of the heart and things that Torben was right about, things that he kept very hush-hush in the beginning, because at that point, early on in the USA, there was persecution immediately. Maybe all of that calmed down when somebody gave him the right hand of fellowship. Just saying. So the workers in the vineyard, I came to the understanding that I preached the gospel for many years, basically like the Lord's servants in the Old Testament, and that I was missing a bit of peace. But there's another side to that. And the other side is we did understand a lot about the gospel back in the day. And we did get a lot of things done. And we did see a lot of miracles. And you know what? Those of us who have borne the heat of day, we would kind of like to be acknowledged for being in the faith. And sometimes that opportunity is not afforded by the young. And I know it may be hard for somebody who has only studied one or two of the 66 books of the Bible to understand that there are those who have gone before, and maybe they have something to say. All right, the Gospel Gunslingers. Is that name helpful? Well, I understand that there's a false accusation out there. Even though the accusation is false, understand that the Word tells us that we as believers are the deadly threat to Romanism. So there's a point where they have to run a counterblast. They have to come back at us to try to defend themselves. And the weapons of our warfare are mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds. But you know what? Some of us, like myself, have studied and taught the revolutionary doctrines that caused the United States to be founded. And here on the 4th of July, I was just talking to the Mexican kids, and I said, our founding fathers started writing letters to the patriots, the heroes, the founders of your nation. People like Miguel Hidalgo and Morelos and all the insurgentes. And that's what they were known as, insurgents at the time. Some of these people had been to Nueva Orleans. They had been to Nueva York. Some of them had been to Paris. They'd been to Europe. And they understood around about 1800 that we had thrown the British out. So they started to correspond with the founding fathers of the U.S. The Mexican founding fathers did. And they started to get this crazy idea that they could do it. And it came from the Bible doctrines of our American forefathers, and I'm not ashamed to teach on those. And I've used the name Gospel Gunslingers for over 20 years. And, I got my concealed carry firearms permit when I was 21 years old in a highly restrictive state. I was already a martial arts and self-defense instructor, and I got to be part of the move and the push towards moving the United States back to concealed carry as a nation, and back to people having the mental grit to defend themselves and to not be a victim of crime. By the way, this just recently happened in the nation of Brazil, and when Brazil is plunged into civil war, the wicked are going to have a big problem, that there's lots and lots of armed citizens, women and men. There are lots of armed citizens that carry every day, and when their nation is thrust into chaos, that will be a force to be reckoned with. And maybe because I have stood for these values, and because I have always been willing to use lethal force in self-defense or in defense of others, that the Lord began to open to me so many secrets of the weapons that are mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds. In a church where everybody says that they believe in that, but they won't even testify against a thief. They won't even ask the judge for the maximum penalty when the hirelings in the thin blue line have collared the guy and hauled him in. A lot of times the Christian wants to be the better man and let that guy out so that he can go re-offend. Well, yeah, I'm against that. I'm against that, John. So what about my assertion for John? I've actually got several messages here that I'm going to play having to do with me and Torben, but Torben and I. Sorry, I don't speak English all the time. So yeah, I went to see John, and these are the things that he had a problem with. That there was anybody in Mexico that was praying for revival. There was anybody that had made their home there, that had friends there. Some people marry into the culture. They have kids that speak both languages and have both cultures. A lot of people go out, and Moses included, and become a member of another society. And the fact that was found here was really, really disturbing to John. I guess he didn't want to bump into anybody that was praying for him. I guess he didn't want the right hand of fellowship from somebody who has been in Mexico for a lot of years. It's just amazing how some people can move in the miraculous in one area and then just be totally blind to it in another area. So, yeah, I told John that, first of all, he did break the law, okay? There's talk about whether maybe Torben might have broken the law. John did break the law. And I brought it up, and I said, John, there are laws about some of the things that you're doing here, and I'd like to tell you about it. He was very resistant to that. And then he fired back at me and says, I don't want to hear about it. All right, well, you're in a country, and when you come in, there's a soldier standing there with a machine gun. Sometimes they even got the grenade launcher on the bottom in case you decide to make a run at them with your vehicle. They'll put that 40 mic through your windshield, and it will be over. You got to ask those guys nicely, hey, we'd like to come in, and we're going to feed the orphans, and we teach the Bible, and we're just going to have some church meetings. I'm going to come and visit some churches in your nation. I heard that there's good things going on. I'd like to come see. I'm a tourist, but I'm going to visit some churches. You got to ask that guy nicely. He's there to kill you, or to put you in chains if you threaten his patria, his nation that he loves. They're young and they're sharp and they're very serious and they love their country. And if any, you know who they're looking for? The guy that doesn't love their country, that's looking to get something. All right, so yeah, John asked me to leave, and I said, that's all right, John. But I did tell him. I said, first of all of you cannot make me leave. Him or his ogre that he whistled for, who came running up on me. It was very aggressive. Maybe it would have been easier for everybody if I had just heard him, and I really was within my rights to do that. But we decided to keep it in the heavenlies. And John dared me to undust my feet against him. Well, it happened. And so that is some of what you're seeing. Some of what you're seeing is natural. Some of it has to do with that event. But I did tell John to get out of my country. So maybe it wasn't right what I did. Because really what I want, and we're going to talk about John as the Jonah on your ship. I hope you stick around for that. Really what I want is for John Bjarnastein to get out of both of my countries. I don't want you, John, in the United States, and I don't want you in Mexico, and I really don't want you in any of Latin America. So, you can go back to Europe or to the East or someplace in the old world where they don't understand pioneers. It's amazing that you've got a pioneer school, and what did people have? A bad attitude? If they run into anybody that wrestles bears, anybody that has the skills to make fire and to survive in the dark places and the lonely places. You know who my heroes are? I love Laura Ingalls Wilder, and her pa, Charles, was a mighty prophet, if you don't know, and a real pioneer. Went across the United States, and it was Indian territory at the time. He went to the west, crossed the Mississippi over the ice, fought wild Indians, wild beasts, and he had to use every bit of his faith. Oh, we lost some viewers. Got their feelings hurt. There's discipline. It's a part of being a disciplined one. And if you haven't gone in and watched my playlist, Introduction to Joel's Army, I'd advise you to do that, especially if you're thinking about coming to Mexico. But any of you who have or have been talking about coming to Mexico, you're going to need a new home. So you just think about what you're going to do. Jim Bridger, Hugh Glass, these are my heroes. The real pioneers. They used to balance their Hawk and 50 cal right on the saddle horn, and they'd ride all day long with that rifle on their saddle horn so they could get to it in an instant. And I'm not ashamed to call those people my heroes. Getting into the last century, my grandfather flew heavy bombers from the 8th Air Force. Went to Berlin, went to Mersburg 4 times. Those are my heroes. Those are pioneers. And if anybody was going to come to America and open a pioneer school, they might want to learn what a pioneer is. And I don't mean reading the definition in the dictionary. I mean, perhaps someone should learn to be what was on the front of their outfit. So, yeah. The other half of what's happening is that the plowman overtakes the reaper. This is in Amos 9. Let's just go ahead and read that. This is a promise, and this came up in the in the comments. So let's see if we can find this, and then we're going to go to Jonah. So Amos 9. I don't have it marked in this one. I hope I can find it. Maybe that one's going to hide from us. But the plowman overtakes the reaper, and the treader of grapes, him that soweth seed. And so this is a promise for the last days, that there will be sowers, and there will be reapers. So there's people out sowing grape seeds, to plant vines. And this is the evangelist. This is the person who's doing the work of God. And who's going to overtake that guy? The treader of grapes is going to overtake the sower. So the judgment of God will catch up even to the evangelists, even to those that are doing evangelistic work in the last days. The grapes are being trodden right now. And the plowman will overtake the reaper. So somebody's out, the harvest is ripe, right? They're working, they're trying to get it brought in. And who overtakes them? The plow, to just plow that harvest back into the earth. So understand that this is the promise of the end, that judgment comes. Judgment comes. All right, Jonah. So I want to talk about the Jonah on your ship. Let me just play this. There is no... I'm getting messages here on my other phone. Alright, I'm just going to show you this because there's no personal information on here. So, it's going to boot up. Here we go. Torben Sondergaard, February 13, 2022. Can you see that? Maybe there. Alright. So it's these two messages that I'm going to play. And if you see there in white, Torben says, "Oh, I called by mistake. It was a mistake. I should call another Samuel." Alright. So I woke up to a missed call. So this is this year, February 13th. So here's my return call to Torben.
Brother Torben, how are you? How is the apostle this morning? I missed a call from you last night, and my phones will be off most of the day today, but leave me a message and I'll get back to you for sure. I'll be here for a few minutes. I'm just wrapping up Bible study and I have some business to make way out in the country. All right, God bless you, brother. Bye-bye.
All right, so I sent him that message, and he says, returning his call, he says, "It was a mistake. I should call another Samuel." So he pushed the wrong button by mistake and called me. I guess I can drink coffee while I'm playing this for you. So here's my response. This is not to John. This is to Torben. And you see he's got his little blue check mark. So, you listen to this.
I knew that, Torben. I knew you called me by accident and that you wouldn't do it intentionally. But I've also been doing apostolic work for enough years that I know what happens when people are resisting the word of the Lord and when they don't want to call me back. The Lord puts it in my path. Now I'm in another country. And so your mistake was of the Lord. And you and I have an unfinished conversation. And you know, you have been very mature and adult and very open to talk about your intimacy issues and your issues with your own natural father. And I don't want to be critical in an area where you've already been critical of yourself. But I'd like to admonish you that you got further to go. That you have a resistance to dealing with strong men, with men who are grounded, who are sound. And the Lord is gathering his eagles right now. And I would invite you to be a part of that. I just preached on YouTube about the gathering of the eagles. And some eagles are going to come to you. And you as an eagle should come to other eagles. Let's work out together. Let's win the world together. I hope you come to Mexico. I hope that I do get a call from you sometime. You know, I hope that you get rid of some of these chickens and turkeys that are gathering and flocking around you and really focus on the eagles. And I feel like you owe me an apology for sending a turkey in this arrogant slob, John Bjarnastein, that you sent down to my country. Now, you had a part in that. Why didn't you pull the plug on him years ago, knowing that this was in him, knowing that he was full of arrogancy, and that he was full of pride, and that he feels like he's the king of the world? And I'd like for you to call me when the word of the Lord comes to pass against people like him, because it's out there. That judgment is out there, and the angel of the Lord is pursuing him. So, Torben, I really hope that we have some discourse in the future. And I wouldn't have been harsh if you would have just been open. But this is what you do with strong men. You run away from them and run back to your turkeys. And they'll lick your fingers and they'll lick your wrists. But you got some troublemakers in your midst. And I just hope that when the nippers come, when the Lord comes to prune his vine, that you yourself are not found a castaway. But this is the issue of the sons of Eli. Eli restrained not his sons, even though they were sleeping with the women at the temple. And God raised up another priesthood, and Eli fell and broke his neck. That's an admonition for all of us that have years and are mature in the faith, that we must restrain our children, and that we must deal with them, or the Lord God Almighty will deal harshly with us. Bless you, brother. I love you. I pray for you every day. I don't know if you know that. There's a very short list of people that I lift up before the Lord by name every day, and you and Lena are on it. Anyway, I love you. You're welcome in Mexico. I hope you come. But, the nippers are coming too. And I just feel like there's a flock of turkeys. All right, my friend. Bye-bye.
All right, there you have it. So this is, 8 weeks after the fact, after our meeting in Merida, John's and mine. And not only did Torben not take my advice and separate from John, and not only did he not apologize, he let that guy near the helm of his ship. And who's running TLR right now? Who got on to give the official update on Torben's case? John Bjarnastein. John Bjarnastein. By the way, John, you wore a new shirt. You wore a clean shirt. I got to give you a plus. It looks like you've been working out too. It's going to take a little bit more than that. It's going to take a little bit more than that. If you want to be free, get out of the Americas. So Jonah was a man who knew which way God wanted him to go, and he fled from the face of the Lord. And this is where the sea wrought and was tempestuous, because there was somebody on that ship that was fighting against God. There was somebody on that ship that was going the opposite way from what God wanted to go. And that's what she did in Mexico. So what did John do? What did John do? First of all, he asked me to leave, and I was pretty diplomatic. All right? Been to a dozen Kickstarts, know all of the top people. And a lot of them, I've come to their Kickstart and prayed for them, and we're friends later, and we stay in touch on the phone, and they follow my channel, and I keep in touch with them, and I know what's going on in their life, and that shouldn't be so strange. But who did not want to be friends? John. All right, John. Get what you want. I bent over backwards to make friends with you. The other thing, you want to know what else John did? The real person that God is calling to spearhead the movement in Mexico, John had him under his thumb. Yeah, John was bossing him around, and the fact that this man reverenced John, that was something that John could have been honored by, but instead, it all got weird, and that was cocaine. And there's a point where the Pharisee loves the greetings in the marketplaces and the honor of men. And so, yeah, John just pushed that guy down and pushed that guy down. Oh, and I did buy him a birthday cake on his birthday. And John was just so unhappy about that. Somebody being honored in their own country, in their own language on the day that they were born. And you want to know who to blame for that? The birthday boy's daddy told me that what day he was going to turn. And when his dad told me that, I felt that I had been commissioned to honor his son on his birthday with a small act. And you know what? There's a Mexican way that this is done. And if you know people from this nation, and if you are a person from this nation, or even if you're an alien or a foreigner that's in this nation, you ought to see how they do it. It's not so strange. It's kind of a beautiful thing. So, yeah, not only did Torben not kick John to the curb and tell him, let's do like Lot and Abraham. You go that way, I'll go this way. Or I'll go... There's so many ways to separate peaceably, amicably, or in hostility, but regardless, it's something that God demands. And when this happened in the book of Jonah, the sea refused to cease from her raging until Jonah was cast up. And the prophet himself said, this is Jonah 1:10, Then were the men exceedingly afraid, and said unto him, Why hast thou done this? Fled from the presence of the Lord. For the men knew that he fled from the presence of the Lord, because he had told them. Then they said unto him, What shall we do unto thee, that the sea may be calm unto us? For the sea wrought and was tempestuous. The prophet himself decrees, he says, Take me up and cast me forth into the sea, so shall the sea be calm unto you. For I know that for my sake this great tempest is upon you. You want to know for whose sake the great tempest is upon you? John Bjarnastein. It's for his sake. And him being at the helm of the ship, listen, get off of it. And if you're not off of it, if you want to save the ship, get him off of it. 15, so they took up Jonah and cast him forth into the sea, and the sea ceased from her raging. There's a whole other lesson later on about the repentance of Nineveh. So the nippers. I also know, by the way, that there's a rumor out there that I made the call, that the accusation against Torben, of whatever he's in jail for, trafficking or whatever, that I'm the one that did that. It wasn't me. I'm a refugee. I'm not going to call the cops in the country that I'm fleeing from. I won't even work with them on trafficking cases. They're so corrupt. I'm going to read you something about that. First, let's go to a psalm. So, in review, I put on my red shirt, went to go visit John, checked out, see if there was a Friday night meeting, which Torben's philosophy is to get the people together, let them all drink some coffee and get to know one another, and chit-chat a little bit. That did not happen at that meeting. So you see, the organic fellowship is already being cut out, and the whole idea of the kickstart has become very mechanical, or it had become at that meeting very mechanical. So I went in there and I asked the Lord to reveal His Word to me, and He took me straight to the vine being pruned. And I spoke about this a little bit in my last video, so I will not belabor what was here in the book of John, but it's very clear that the branch cannot bear fruit of itself except it abide in the vine. The Lord Jesus saying, No more can ye bear fruit except ye abide in me. If a man abide not in me, he is cast forth as a branch and is withered, and men gather them and cast them into the fire, and they are burned. So the pruning of the vine is what the Lord actually took me to. It scared me so bad, I answered God and I said, if this is your word for this event, which I really just hope for good traction on, some people to get healed, which they didn't, and some salvations, some baptisms maybe, some people getting filled with the Holy Ghost, and starting down the path to discipleship, that would have been grand. But here's what the Lord said was His word, that the nippers are coming, that the vine is going to be pruned. Are you in the fourth ground? Have you borne fruit after yourself? Have you borne the heat of day? Have you not become choked by the desire for other things and riches and worldly stuff? Have you made it to that place? Okay, congratulations. This word is for you. Every branch that bears fruit will be pruned, that it may become more fruitful. And every branch that does not bear fruit, listen, I got fruit trees out here. I've cut off a lot of branches that aren't bearing fruit. Every branch that does not bear fruit will be cut off. Scared me so bad that I said to the Lord, if this is your word for this event and the movement, and maybe for the whole world, I'm going to need you to confirm it in the Psalms. And the Spirit of the Lord said to me, take your Spanish Bible that's new and go to the Psalms and turn the pages until there's a page stuck together, and that will be the page that you have never opened in your new Bible, and there you will find my word. And so I did that. I only turned about 3 or 4 pages till it was stuck, and I opened that, cracked the seal, and it was this page. I'm going to read it in English. This is Psalm 80, verse 8. Thou hast brought a vine out of Egypt. Right there's the vine. Boom! You can believe if you want to. Or you can naysay and poo-poo. Maybe send me a snarky comment from an anonymous account with no followers and no videos, no information about who you are. The vine was right on that page in this Psalm, number 80. Thou hast brought a vine out of Egypt. Thou hast cast out the heathen and planted it. Thou preparedst room before it and didst cause it to take deep root, and it filled the land. The hills were covered with the shadow of it, and the boughs thereof were like goodly cedars. She sent out her boughs into the sea, and her branches unto the river. Why hast thou then broken down her hedges, so that all they which pass by the way do pluck her? And actually the verses that I read first when I turned that page were these. The boar out of the wood doth waste it, and the wild beast of the field doth devour it. Return, we beseech thee, O God of hosts, look down from heaven and behold, and visit this vine, and the vineyard which thy right hand hath planted, and the branch that thou madest strong for thyself. This even talks about the Christ, the Lord Jesus, the branch. It is burned with fire. It is cut down. They perish at the rebuke of thy countenance. Let thy hand be upon the man of thy right hand, upon the Son of Man, whom thou madest strong for thyself. So this goes right hand in hand with, I will strike the shepherd and the sheep will be scattered. This is the Lord's suffering and crucifixion. That was the page that the Lord took me to. Which is why I spoke so strong with Torben after he called me by divine appointment. I knew he didn't want to talk with me. He wants to talk with somebody that's going to stand there and nod their head. Yeah. I hope he ceases from that right now. We would like him in the company of fathers. So I want to read you a news article. Everybody knows that Torben is mentioned by name in my asylum claim that's now been more than a year and went directly, by the way, to the president's desk. I didn't go in and stand at the Guatemalan border and fight with the National Guard. I went to the president's palace and put in my claim personally, and then went and did interviews, investigations, submitted documents, stood in line with Haitians and Venezuelans and Cubans. The way has been paved. And this is the other thing that John did. This is the big thing that John Bjarnastein did, is disrespected all of that. You know, whoever comes in here and says, hey, I was at Torben's Bible school and I don't feel safe anymore in my own nation, and so I'm moving across the street. I hope that you respect this nation and its laws and its history and its culture, because I love this nation, and thank God that I have an adopted nation, because I can't be in the nation of my birth. Okay, so this is an article by Burning Platform. Interesting news site. They have a lot to say, and it's called Rogue Cops. So I'm just going to read you some. There are probably a dozen Supreme Court decisions that are mentioned here. And this talks about qualified immunity. And here's the opening line. The Supreme Court has spoken. There will be no consequences for cops who brutalize the citizenry, and no justice for the victims of police brutality. Oh, you thought they just overturned Roe v. Wade. No, they incited not only rioting and unrest, really civil war with these decisions. And part of that civil war is your rights as a citizen and an upstanding Christian, people who historically respect the law for the most part. Oh man, here a pop-up has popped up. Let me try to get that shut. So it's going to take me to the ad. Stay with me. Interesting, the Lord would say a boar out of the wilderness. That feral pigs would come and waste his vine. It's written. Okay. Although the court's rulings on qualified immunity, this is from this session, 2022, for police who engage in official misconduct, were largely overshadowed by its politically polarizing rulings. See, that's what everybody's celebrating right now, or protesting, is those rulings. But they did something else that you probably didn't hear about. They took away your rights. The rights of even a natural-born American. Okay, the doctrine of qualified immunity was intended to insulate government officials from frivolous lawsuits. But the real purpose of qualified immunity is to ensure that government officials are not held accountable for official misconduct. Here's decision 1, Egbert versus Boole. The court gave total immunity to Border Patrol agents who beat up a bed and breakfast owner. This doesn't even have to do with the migrants. This is an American that they wanted to bust in their door and go search the place, violate all their rights. All right, it's going on. The decision is Egbert versus Boole. Here's another one, Cope versus Cogdill. The court, I'm not going to elaborate on that one. Ramirez versus Guadarrama. The court let stand a lower court ruling granting immunity to police officers who fired their tasers at a suicidal man who had doused himself in gasoline, causing the man to burst in flames. So the guy was covered in gasoline. The police ignited him with aggressive use of their weapons, and they're off scot-free. Does this sound like how Torben's being treated? Under the guise of qualified immunity, there have been no consequences for police who destroyed a private home by bombarding it with tear gas grenades during a SWAT team raid gone awry, or for the cop who mistakenly shot a 10-year-old boy after aiming for and missing the non-threatening family dog. All right, so they can shoot your dog. They can try to shoot your dog for no reason, without a threat. They can then accidentally kill your kid, and there's no punishment to that officer. Does this sound like what's going on? Because it is what's going on. All right, there's more. The arresting officer who sicked a police dog on a suspect who had already surrendered. Oh, you think if the police tell you to stop, that you just put your hands up and it's over? No, the police dog then comes and bites you, and there's no consequence for that officer. This goes on and on and on and on and on. It's on theburningplatform.com. Whether it's police officers breaking through people's front doors and shooting them dead in their homes, or strip searching motorists. Oh, you thought you could drive down the street? Doesn't matter if you're black or white. You can still get the anal probe right there on the side of the road. And the police, no consequence. And you know what? All of this has been recently approved by the Supreme Court. No more Miranda warnings. The police don't even have to tell you anymore that if you talk to them, everything you say is going to be used against you. They don't even have to warn you anymore. That's only been 50 years, since the 70s. Qualified immunity has become a nearly fail-safe tool to let police brutality go unpunished and deny victims their constitutional rights. The Supreme Court has built qualified immunity into an often insurmountable police defense by intervening in cases mostly to favor the police. Oh, warrantless searches, that's next. Anderson versus Creighton. Excessive force against protesters. Saucier versus Katz. Shooting a fleeing suspect in the back. Oh yeah, cops are immune to prosecution or even civil law for that. Brousseau versus Haugen. I know you thought you lived in a land free. It's just not so. It's just not so. You live in a totalitarian, tyrannical state, and the last people to figure that out are the Christians, who are right now being rounded up. So think about making a new home. Think about following the path that I have prepared at great expense. My name on the line, my history on the line. I hope you behave if you come over. Let's all be civilized people, even though our country has come away from that. And if you get across the border, then I'll help you. Don't call me unless you're within La República de Mexico. All you gotta do is take this, stick it like that, make sure it's all powered down, make a little sandwich out of it, at least 8 times thick, and then you do like Taco Bell, and make it run. If you have a passport, it's coming at the port of entry. If you don't have a passport, if you are a refugee, irregular entry is forgiven for those who come because they feel threatened by the persecution, especially of a rogue government or criminal elements within a nation or within the authorities of that nation. This is the launching off point for definitely for the Americas and maybe for the rest of the world. A guy could get on a plane in Mexico City. You know, it's the greatest city in the world. It's the most populous city in the world. It's over 50 million people. Even in China, there's nothing like Mexico City. It's a great capital. And you can get on a plane there and fly anywhere in the world. There are over 100 consular representations in Mexico City from all the nations of the world. There are people from every nation and language there, African languages, Asian languages. It's an amazing, amazing place. And it's also been the traditional capital all the way back to the conquistadors of the Americas. Yeah, it's Mexico City. And this nation of 170 million people is by far the greatest and most powerful of Hispano-America. Brazil is bigger and stronger. They will soon enter into some struggles and some troubles because there's an entrenched criminal element within their government, and the president, who's a Christian, is not going to give up without a fight. He's not going to let the wicked come in and steal his election. He's not going to let them come in and remove from power what the voice of the people have chosen. He's not going to let it happen. And so in just a very few months, Brazil is going to erupt. And there were some Brazilians that came in on the comments of the last video. Understand, I love your nation. I actually offered to come and pray for the president because since his campaign where he suffered an assassination attempt, he's been very sick. He's had repeated surgeries and he still wears a colostomy bag. And so I have offered to come to Brazil and to pray for him personally. Maybe some of you would like to be part of that. I love the nation. It's a great nation. And the movement's very strong in that nation. So they haven't needed the assistance with getting things squared away that Latin America, Hispanic has needed. All right, I am out of time. Understand that this place where I am, where I've prepared a city of refuge, this is the only way forward for the gospel. I hope you come. I hope the Lord frees Torben and that he has enough sense to run for the border, because many people who are named by name in my claim are unlawfully imprisoned. Torben Sondergaard, Sam Martino, who shot footage of Ashley Babbitt's death. Joe Biggs. You know, I brought him up his party favors from Mexico so that he would know that he could continue to broadcast. Ethan Nordine, aka Rufio Pammon. You know, if you open up my opening video on this channel, there I am with a selfie with each of these people and just other known people in the conservative movement. And of those that I named by name in my claim, half of them are behind bars. Don't be one of them. There's still a free world. When you're persecuted in one place, flee to another and there preach. And I hope you read the opening slide of my last video where I got on Torben's live stream and said, Torben, it's not too late for you to come to Mexico, but someday it will be. Even though there were some issues between us, that was a friendly warning. Little did I know it would be his last before the current trial. I hope the Lord frees him from that. Thanks for coming along. If you wind up in La República, reach out to me. I'm easy to find. GospelGunslingers.com.